Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome once again to Whiskey Congress. Thanks for joining us. Good news is we have yet another whiskey review, and this one I'm pretty excited about. Steven, how you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. So you got a shipment in from Scotland.
Yeah, so, which I was having a tough time finding it here stateside and got a good deal on it, so I had it shipped over. I paid an arm and a leg for shipping, though. That's the one thing that sucks about that. But it ends up balancing out. So the whiskey of the day is Laphroaig Quarter Cask, which is an offering from the Laphroaig distillery. Laphroaig is known for their very distinct taste. It's an Islay Scotch that is very peaty, very smoky, wood and oaky, and that rhymed. Lyrical genius. And the quarter casks are put in. It's a Scotch made in Scotland, but they take the whiskey and then they put it in bourbon barrels, and then just stuff it in a dark back room and let it kind of take on some of the sweetness that you're going to get from a bourbon. And so I think when you drink it, that comes out a little bit. What do you think?
I think it's fantastic. Here's the funny thing to me: as much as much smoke and peat as it has in its flavor, it has so much more in the nose. Like it almost, I mean, when you smell it, you're like, wow, and then it tastes great, but
Right.
it's not. It's so big on the nose that it's not as big in the
Right.
mouthfeel.
So and I guess what Jim is saying when he says it's big on the nose, when you actually like go and get a good whiff of it and you put it close, you're just like, wow, that is, you smell the smoke, you smell, pretty much the swamp of Scotland, and it hits you really aggressively from the smell, but from a taste standpoint, it's just very, very smooth. It is a strong, let me tell you.
92 proof.
Yeah, it's a 92 48 by volume, so it's actually 96, yeah.
Oh, boy.
It's 48%, so I mean, it's a heavy hitter. In terms of alcohol volume, but it doesn't. You don't have that alcohol-y.
There's no burn.
No, there is no burn. Which if you get the Laphroaig, the 10-year, the 10-year Laphroaig, I mean, it punches you in the face. I mean, it is just.
I haven't had that in such a long time. I've never had a Laphroaig I didn't like.
Yeah, and that Laphroaig is actually something that really takes some getting used to because it's so that is a no frills Islay Scotch. It's heavy on the peat, heavy on the smoke, aged for 10 years, and you get it, and it's just like, okay, well, that's that they have people do taste tests all the time. Like there's actually, if you go to YouTube and look up Laphroaig taste tests, people's reaction to it is great, especially non-Scotch drinkers that are not used to some of the heavier, smokier, peatier Scotches. If that's their first if that's their first introduction into smoky Scotch, it is always an interesting face that they make, to say the least. And this, the quarter cask, I guess it has to be the bourbon barrels that really smooth it out, kind of lay down. It lays down a lot smoother on the palate. It's so easy to drink, which is dangerous because, again,
it's 96 proof.
It's 96 proof, so it doesn't take much to really hit you. But it's just something that you could continually pour into the glass and sip on nice and easy. And it's just a great offering from them. And what's frustrating though is, I said I got it shipped from Masters of Malt, which Masters of Malt always has a great selection of whiskeys, but again, they are shipping from Scotland, so you're going to pay a price to have it shipped over. I got this shipped, and then I walked into.
Don't tell me.
Yeah, I walked in there, and the owner knows me well now, because I always bug him like, hey,
right.
Did you get this? Did you get this? And he's like, I'll tell you when I get stuff. Well, I walk in, and he's like, hey, guess what I got? And I said, what? And I thought, there's a new Ardbeg out, and I thought it was that. And he's like, no, it's not in the state yet. I got that Laphroaig quarter cask. I'm like, are you serious? And he had it, but I was like, well, I already ordered it. He's just like, all right, we'll buy something else. I said, all right. So I did. I bought something else. So,
Oh, so there's another surprise for the next show?
No, I don't know. I don't know if we'll see.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. All right. So, yesterday, well,
hold on. So.
Oh, yeah, we got to score it.
Score it.
9.
It's hard to argue that. It's really hard to argue that. I mean, it checks every box in terms of a good whiskey, in terms of flavor, in terms of aftertaste, in terms of, I guess the only thing really knocking it down is just that it's so heavy on the nose that it could kind of turn you away if you're not wanting to take the plunge.
I like it.
It's so weird. I mean, if you like whiskey and you like to smoke, you'll love it, right? But I mean, this is the sort of thing. Like if someone walked in this room right now, they're like, "What is that? What are you guys doing in here?" So I think I'm gonna introduce partial point here and go 8.5. It is really good, but I think there's we're gonna continue to delve into this with some different really obscure scotches I'm gonna get my hands on, and so
I'm giving it a 9 because I don't want to give it a 10 because I want to save room for that next level,
right.
If and when I come across it. But this is right up my alley.
Now, what I could argue is that it's that good. Where I mean, I think if you gave it a 10, I don't think that too many people would be too upset with you. I'm going to go 8.5. And
maybe we should switch to like a wine scale, like we're 1 to 100, so we can put some more differentiation in there,
or a cigar scale. But yeah,
okay.
But yeah, I mean, it is. And that's a good idea, actually, switching, going to the 1 to 100 scale. But either way, I mean, for me, if we're going on a scale 1 to 100, I'd give it probably about an 89.
I'd probably get about a 94.
Okay, well,
93.
And, like I said, we're going to continue to do it. I mean, it's great. It forces whiskey into the show called Whiskey Congress. So, we'll run with it.
Sounds good.
Now to the Congress.
Now to the Congress part. Yes,
Whiskey Congress.
All right, so a little couple of gubernatorial elections yesterday, most notably New Jersey and Virginia, and in both cases, the Republican in New Jersey was using Trump-like, anti-sanctuary city, anti-immigration ads. Ed Gillespie, who ran as a Republican in Virginia, I saw one of his ads which basically said, who's the Virginia governor elect? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Ralph Northam.
So basically, it was Ralph Northam weak on MI13, and they were literally running an ad where it was like
MS13.
MS13.
What does MI6 have to do with this?
Yeah. So you're on an ad where it basically showed an MS13 kill, rape, control, or something as their slogan, and showed horrific looking gangsters and saying, Ralph Northam wants this guy. You need Ed Gillespie to keep your family safe. And that style of tactic got rejected in a big way. I mean, he lost by almost 10 points. Trump immediately ran away from, saying this guy didn't embrace me enough. Trump did not actually campaign for him, but both parties wanted that race. And for the first time since the Trump election, the Democrats won 2 of them. And that, I think Virginia's the big one. A Democrat winning in New Jersey is...
It's not unheard of.
Right. I mean, it's expected, I think.
Chris Christie has been there for a while. And, Chris Christie took a pretty hard line around election time when he was running for president. He definitely embraced, he shied, he kind of attacked Trump, and then he shied away. And then when we realized he was losing, then he jumped on Trump's bandwagon, and then Trump, had the statements about grabbing the pussy and everything else. And so then Chris Christie kind of backed away, and Steve Bannon actually talked about why Chris Christie wasn't a part of the administration, because he bailed on Trump when that whole thing came out. And I think Steve Bannon's line was, we told him that he needed to be, if he wanted to be there, then he had to be, at the airport at a certain time, and he wasn't there, and they left. Now what he leaves out is that they told him, they basically pulled get there at 6:00, but they left at 4.
Right. Well, but also Chris Christie prosecuted Jared Kushner's dad.
Right, which is interesting. So the question is, did Trump X him out? Did Jared Kushner say, I don't want him? Or was it a loyalty thing? So there, that's not entirely clear. I'm sure there's a number of reasons why they didn't want him, and Chris Christie after has been kind of just been an ass really,
right,
in a lot of different ways, and so. But they had a Republican governor with him, and then they elected a Democrat, and we see what happened in Virginia. Now, the Democrat that was elected in New Jersey, he's a Wall Street, Goldman Sachs guy. There's plenty of people out there who'll say, "How is this any better?"
He's pro weed.
Yeah, I mean, he's talked about legalizing weed. He's talked about raising the minimum wage to $15. He pushed really hard on some of the safer, progressive things to talk about, and so we'll see what happens. I mean, it's really any campaign, it's all in an election cycle. There's a lot of talk. So the question is, what does he do now that he's in office? And obviously it's way too soon, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in Virginia. Virginia obviously is the bigger one because it's where it is.
More of a swing state.
It's more of a swing state. That was a big, you're talking about being down south, and having Democratic control in a southern state is something. Now, Virginia, oddly enough, though, there's that map when you look at it is more purple than it is red.
It's a weird state.
Yeah, I mean, so we'll see what Ralph Northam does. That was an ugly campaign, though.
Right.
It was really, because listen, Ralph Northam ran an ad about Gillespie that was pretty brutal about abortion and raping babies, killing children. It was a mess. So I mean, they both played pretty dirty. Northam won. We'll see where it goes. Now, I'm a big proponent of winning, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
And, the Democrats took many losses, took many L's over the last, I would say, really 4 years. And so this was a shift. You saw a lot of Democrats win, and then you also saw a lot of, issues on the ballot that were more progressive, that were voted in favor of, and so we'll see if this translates to an even bigger swing. I mean, because these are governor races,
right?
Gubernatorial races, I should say. So, governors they do have an impact, but it's not quite the same as impacting the federal government in terms of like senators and congressmen. So 2018 is your midterm election, and we'll see if the Democrats can keep the momentum. I think there's some things that they can do, I think, strategically to really impact that. They can take advantage of a lot of the missteps of the GOP, a lot of the missteps of the Trump administration, but they have to do it the right way. And if they do it the right way, which I have no confidence or faith in Tom Perez or anyone over there doing anything right. I mean, Donna Brazil's book is coming out or is out, and she levied some pretty hefty charges against the Democratic Party, which to me wasn't a surprise, right? The Donna Brazil saying that, well, the Hillary Clinton team was basically given carte blanche to run the DNC, and it was her race to win or lose, which she ultimately lost, and Bernie Sanders never really had the support or backing of the Democratic Party. So there was a lot of accusations levied. Obviously Hillary Clinton and the DNC are either saying, well, it's not important. I mean, we want to fight. We want transparency. We don't necessarily agree with her take, her stance, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, it was obvious that all that stuff was going on. I mean, Debbie Wasserman Schultz was booted for
essentially admitting what you just said.
Right,
yeah.
admitting that. So, I mean, I don't know where they're coming off saying it's not true.
Tom Perez was on Meet the Press this last week, and he called Chuck Todd Tim, then immediately corrected himself and said, I was thinking of Tim Russert. I'm a Buffalo guy. And I don't want to kill a guy for just making one dumb fumble, but I was pissed. I was like, dude, you're acting like you're reading a script from 10 years ago. Literally, you didn't even change the fucking name.
Yeah, that's again with the leadership of the Democratic Party. I have no problem hitting them with a pretty with a heavy stick, because they're just doing a poor job of managing their own political process, and
they've taken things for granted for a long fucking time,
right?
And
I mean, just
finally burned them big time,
right? And I think and they're not doing anything like it doesn't look to me that they're doing anything different, right? I mean, if the Democrats learned anything, then they would be revamping their entire approach, and right now all they're doing is giving the same old shit a new name.
No, they have a new slogan, Steve.
What is it?
It was
the New Deal.
No, but it was the Papa John's ripoff that I was talking about.
Yeah.
It was better politics, better something. It was like we talked about it a while ago.
Yeah, it was. That's how good it was. We can't even remember
exactly.
But, I mean,
it was like a Papa John's ad,
and it was all the same shit that they've been saying. They're doing the same thing. Like if the Democrats would have learned anything, then they would have people in the streets knocking on doors, in black neighborhoods, reaching out to women, and not just the women, trotting out in front of us the same women who've been out who've been in Congress for the last 30 years. Like, hey, we've got Nancy Pelosi, and we've got what's her name in Massachusetts?
Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, Elizabeth Warren, and everybody. I mean, it's just like, okay, yeah, we get it, but obviously you need new blood. Obviously you need new tactics, and we need to see that from the Democrats. That's the one thing that scares me, is that they do have this momentum and they have this opportunity. Can they take advantage of it? And my fear and my thought is the answer is no.
Well, and you mentioned a little bit before, they keep coming back with, we're pro-choice. If you don't vote for us, we're gonna lose your reproductive rights. That doesn't resonate with all Democrats.
Nope.
And you got to do more than try to scare. Well, and this is guilty of politics in general. It's not about here's what I'm going to do for you. It's here's why this other person is terrible for you. Right. It's more about scare tactics and label shaming than it is actually saying, hey, if you put me in the position of this kind of power, which a governor is a very powerful position, right, here's what I'm going to do. And the legalized weed thing is big to me, because I want to get people to stop going to prison for something that I consider to be essentially a non-issue, as I sit here with a bottle of 96 proof whiskey in front of me saying it's
right. I mean, stop. Obviously, there's a crime aspect too, but then I think there are some plenty of useful.
Yeah, there's other reasons.
There's plenty of good uses of marijuana, and this debate is. I don't think this debate over marijuana has anything really to do with its actual danger. It's not that. It's just that there are certain people who've had a hard line on, all they know is say no to drugs. All they know is Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan and the DARE program, and any and all drugs are bad, and they can't change. They can't come off of it.
Drugs are bad.
They won't look at science. They won't look at actual proof. It's just, well, it's all bad. Jeff Sessions is the dark marauder for anti-drugs and anti-weed and anti-pot and everything else. And I think of that terrible joke that he told about the KKK and everything else. So
right.
I just
the joke was, for those who didn't hear it from us before, I used to think the KKK was all right, then I found out they smoke weed. So that's a joke that reveals a lot.
Right. I mean, it's so bad on so many different levels. But actually, it's just bad on actually the main level.
Fundamental level.
Right, the fundamental level of that. Hey, I'm okay with the KKK, but now I'm a little wary of those guys because they smoke the reefer.
The other stuff ain't so bad. It's that reefer thing. Speaking of Papa John's, the CEO of Papa John's is claiming that the NFL is causing his product to lose popularity because of the protests. Which is hilarious to me, because he's the world's biggest Trump butt buddy.
Yeah, maybe
not world's biggest, but
I mean, I guess the argument, I'm sure that Jerry Jones or Peyton Manning or somebody said, "Hey, say something." Obviously he's got a partnership with the NFL. I don't know if it's actually true. I mean,
I'm sure the numbers are down, or he probably wouldn't.
The numbers
have said
are down, but the numbers are down with fast food and pizza across the board, because a lot of people are, going with healthier options.
Or mom and pop pizza places that produce a better product. I mean,
well, yeah, but that's always been there. I think there's a shift and I think there is a shift, especially in the millennial generation and younger people, to go for more mom and pop type, because the quality is better.
And
in a lot of instances,
they're anti-corporate,
everything, all that sort of stuff feeds into it. If he wants to say it's the NFL protest, I don't know how organic that is from him. If it's not somebody giving him a nudge, like say, hey, help us out. It really, I saw it. It didn't really blip on my radar. It's interesting that he did pull that out. And I could see if less people are watching the NFL, then
fewer people are seeing the commercials. I mean,
fewer people are seeing the commercials, and maybe people aren't, sitting on their couch ordering pizza, watching a game. Maybe I buy it. Maybe I probably don't. I feel like if you're ordering pizza to watch a football game, you're probably still ordering pizza to do whatever you're doing on Sundays anyway. But
no, maybe not though.
Maybe not. Maybe.
To me, Papa John's means I'm at work in a meeting I don't want to be at, because there were a couple companies I've worked at where if you ordered company lunch, it was Papa John's because they're convenient. They are efficient with delivery. So maybe I've been classically conditioned not to be a big fan of Papa John's.
Maybe so.
All right.
But I don't know. I mean, John,
I thought it was funny that
get out of here.
Yeah.
So you wanted to? Oh, you know what? We got to talk Texas.
We
got to talk about the shooting.
Another mass shooting. I think 25 dead outside of San Antonio. Basically, a guy who was dishonorably discharged from the Air Force because of domestic abuse allegations. I think proven allegations. Gets into a fight with his in-laws.
Like 8 months or a year in jail or something like that.
I mean, all right. Clearly not a guy that should have been given a gun. And I don't know.
Well, when you're dishonorably discharged, you are banned from actually being able to buy a gun, right?
Are you?
You are.
Okay.
Now, what happened in this instance? I think he was in
Did he lie about it?
No, he was in the Air Force, and the Air Force, when they dishonorably discharged him, whatever system that has to be sent to, they didn't send it to that system. So when he went to go get a gun, they did the background check. It didn't pop up that he had been dishonorably discharged, and so he was able to purchase a gun. And so, there's a direct, one of the issues is that there's a direct connection to gun violence and domestic violence.
Right.
And that's not rhetoric. That's not just something you pull out of your ass. Or I pulled out of my ass. There's a direct link to domestic violence and gun violence. And so that should, in most instances, automatically disqualify you from owning a gun. That's the law in most states. And in this instance, the system failed, obviously.
Yeah.
And there's reports out there that his ex-girlfriend or ex-wife's mother, I think his ex-wife's mother-in-law went to that church. He had threatened her in the past, and that may have had something to do with why he went there and shot the place up. It's a horrible story. I mean, the pastor and his wife were out of town, or they're out of the country, I believe.
Yeah.
And their daughter was murdered, along with other.
There were kids. I think there was an 18-month-old.
There was a woman who was pregnant who was killed, and then there was an 18-month-old that was killed.
A 5-year-old.
A 5-year-old, and then all the way up to 72 years
of
age.
There was one family that lost someone from 3 different generations.
It was unbelievable. I mean, it's a horrific story, and I remember seeing it, and it got worse and worse and worse. Now, Trump's big thing was that there was another guy there with the gun who shot him, and I believe
I thought he shot himself. I think they exchanged fire with someone else.
They exchanged fire, and the way I read it is that the guy who chased the shooter shot him, and then the guy ended up turning his own gun on, and he ended up killing himself. Which I don't know how to really. I guess that's a good thing. The guy still, he killed 20 plus people. He injured 50 plus people. It's like, well, had the other guy with the gun not been there, then it could have been way worse. I don't know.
Right.
That's technically right. I'm not going to say that that's not accurate, but I don't know. This guy, this guy, he probably ends up killing himself either way.
The good guy with the gun argument really has never materialized into saving lives. Like a few lives got saved in this case. I hope so.
Right. I don't think it's a. I don't think that's a. That doesn't solve the gun issue.
Right. The fundamental issue of
right. It just doesn't. And the idea that we need more people with access to guns and more people with access to these high-powered rifles. Whether you want to call it an automatic, semi-automatic, all that other shit like that. The idea that we need to put more guns in the hands of people and that will solve the issue. Like, oh, well, had someone been posted there with the gun? Like, really, do we so we want to live in a society where when you go to church, there's someone there posted with a gun to make sure that doesn't happen? I mean, that's the direction we're going. We think that's a good idea.
Steve, after Sandy Hook, people said the teacher should be carrying.
Right.
I mean,
because that's good. That has a great impact on kids.
Because a first grade teacher with a gun is, boy. All right. So anyway, yet another mass shooting. It's awful how that actually was something I had to think about because they're so common now that you almost become numb. It's as horrible as this is.
I can't say you become numb. I can't say that I've become numb. I mean, every time I see the story, it's especially. And I hate to throw this out there, but when you have a kid and you read stories about young kids dying, I just sit there and think about my daughter, and I can't even imagine, what the parents are going through, in the instances where they lost children, and whether it's Sandy Hook or this or anything else, and it doesn't matter how old the child is, but when you think of how young some of these kids are, it just crushes you, and so. That I can't get numb to it. I think if you feel like you're getting numb to it, you need to dig down and figure out a way to not get numb to it. And we have to figure out a solution. And we talked to Mike Wood last week, and I think the more I think about what he's saying, the more I think he's actually absolutely right. I think but getting it done is going to be virtually impossible because we need our government, we need our Congress, the Senate, the president. We need a lot of people to step up and go to the gun manufacturers and say you can't do this anymore in terms of manufacturing X, Y, and Z types of weapons and ammunition and all that other shit. Get rid of it. Do a big government buyback, like he said. Make it something that is scarce. Increase the value to the point where it's no longer. It makes more sense to sell it than it does to keep it, and see what happens. Because like you said, oh, I don't want to give up my toys. Mike's point was you don't have to give it up,
right?
But at some point in time, you sit there and you open your gun safe and you're just like, well,
I haven't touched this thing in 3 years.
I haven't touched this thing in 3 years, and there's not many of them.
It's worth $10,000 now.
Right. It's just like, so what? What are you going to do? It's just like drive for Lyft or go sell your fucking gun.
Right.
He's very right on it, and I think it's when we first started talking to Mike, I was kind of resistant on some of it just because. It seemed like, oh my God, this is so crazy. What is this guy talking about? But then when you sit back and you look at the whole lay of the land and you look at the big picture, it's not that crazy, right? What's crazy is that more people aren't listening to, what he's saying and other people that are kind of presenting these ideas. And then the fact that you have what's really crazy are the people who just are, like the gun lobby, like they don't have a good argument for keeping guns other than it's the Second Amendment
right.
And it's all right. It's just like they'll sit there and argue with you till you're blue in the face that healthcare isn't all right. And it's just like,
right.
Okay, well, so we're literally just saying like whatever is written in the Constitution, that's it, and it can't be changed. And it's like if we
and this doesn't get said as a gun guy, I hate this, but it's absolutely true. The Second Amendment says a well-regulated militia being necessary for the preservation of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment folks generally just talk about the last part. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, where's your well-regulated militia? Because as I understand it, the Founding Fathers wanted not to have a standing professional army because in those times they really didn't have that option because people had to farm and do
right.
other work and keep an economy going. They couldn't put. So I mean,
I'm sorry, Jim. You and my neighbor Steve behind me are not are not a well-regulated militia.
I am very poorly regulated and not a militia.
I mean, like,
if being in a militia involves running more than 100 feet, I'm not in a militia right now. I'm working on that.
okay. I am not a good regulator of you at all.
Yeah.
So it's just at some point in time we're gonna. I mean, I don't know how long it's gonna take, what it's gonna take.
Nothing's going to happen. Come on.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not. And I think, I talked to you about, a story that I want to do on the website, a multi-part series on, mass shootings, gun violence, things like that. We need to flesh that out a little bit more, but I think just it's more important than ever that we at least get it out there. Kind of putting the facts out there, what the facts actually are, letting people decide for themselves. Like on the show we'll talk about kind of our views and our opinions, but I do want to put the data out there as objectively as we can, so that people can go to it and reference it and then make their own decisions on it, and hopefully have good conversation about it.
One other thing that has to be just said again, this does not help my argument, but let's be real. The whole good guy with a gun, the whole Second Amendment is my right, protect me from the government thing, is part of the same scare tactics that have been going on that have led to things like Trump getting elected.
Exactly. And frankly, Jim, what the fuck are you going to do, right? What are you going to do, right, with all your guns, right? Even if the Cleveland police came in, what are you going to do in terms of stopping them? If the SWAT team came in here right now,
I'm going to put my hands in the air and say, "Don't shoot me, please."
I mean, that's the part that kills me is these people that are such pro-gun, like, oh, I got to protect myself from the government. It's just like, get the fuck out of here. You don't have and this isn't but you don't have the balls or physical capacity to do dick against the government. Yeah, I mean, in reality,
Jim Jeffries' joke is, "You're bringing guns to a drone fight." You know that, right?
Exactly. That's great. I mean, it's like you're inside my head, because it's just like there's that. I mean, yes, they could send the SWAT team, or they could send a drone. Fuck you and your guns. I mean, it's amazing how ridiculous this argument is. Now, I'm not saying now
there are legitimate uses, but this goes back to the shotguns and bolt action rifles pretty much do everything you need in terms of home protection and hunting. They do. I hate acknowledging that, because again, it impacts my toys.
Just get yourself a bow.
I've got two of them.
Right. I mean, like,
for home defense, I don't think my bow is my best option though.
I don't know. I think it's pretty good if you're sitting there in a room with a bow and somebody walks in and you put a bow right through their chest. Last I checked, that slows them down.
Oh, it.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about bow hunting, right? Or maybe I don't know enough about
it would be really weird though.
No, I'm talking about all those crossbow things.
Oh, I don't have a crossbow. Those are lame.
Oh, are they now?
They are. Yeah, they're for cheaters. I'm an archery purist. Crossbows are for cheaters. Okay. Crossbows are for cheaters who don't want to do the time.
All right. You going to the Olympics?
I could have beaten Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-il, sorry, the greatest archer of all time.
I don't think you could have. Me and Dennis Rodman disagree.
You and Dennis Rodman can disagree all you want. So on that note, Trump is in Asia. I don't have a whole lot to say about it other than a little more saber rattling from North Korea.
Here's the thing. This. People are trying to make this trip out. I think it's an important trip. I don't think he's not doing an awful job. He's not doing a great job. He's going over there. He's doing his job. I don't. There was a story that he overfed some fish. I think that turned out to be a bullshit story.
Who fucking cares?
I don't. Yeah, I guess he like
of all the things we're going to complain about Donald Trump.
Yeah,
overfeeding the koi is going to be the
right. I mean, and even if I guess the issue is if he had done it, and I think the story was disproven.
All right,
but if he had, I guess the thought is that they were. I forget that they were whoever. I think it was in Japan.
It was in Japan, yeah,
and. They were the was it the president of Japan or the prime minister? I can't remember. But I think they were his koi fish, and so like that's kind of a that's like if you come over here
a status
and
thing, yeah.
Give the president's dog chocolate and it dies. It's just like, all right, that's
Do you know how much koi can go for?
Yeah, they're really expensive.
They can be incredibly expensive.
They're really expensive. I mean, so at the very least, it's just like you got to pony up the money to replace it. But I don't know. Anyway, the point is, there's not a lot coming from this trip. And which is okay. Right, I mean,
no, that's good.
Listen,
sometimes quiet is good.
Quiet is good. I don't think we have to sit there and we need to. When Trump does ridiculous shit, when he does stupid things, when he does things that put people's lives at risk, and he
or
poses
damages our national credibility,
all that stuff, we got to call him out. If he's not doing it, then we don't have to sit there and criticize him for nothing.
It's even worse because you're the little boy who cried wolf at some point, right? At some point, it's like you know the guy throws too many pellets to some koi, and you're going nuts. Right, I mean, I'm all for koi responsibility and koi's controlling their own diet. That's what kind of free market guy I am. That was really bad. I tried. Man. It wasn't there.
Jim,
it wasn't there.
Come on, we were doing so good.
Anyways, I don't have a whole lot more to say about.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think that there's a bigger thing though to what you said about crying wolf and when you do something like that, and you, whether the story was made up or it was exaggerated or inaccurately reported or however you want to say it, that damages your credibility as a media source, as a source that we look to for information, and then that also gives Trump and Bannon and conservative media the ability and the firepower to say the phrase fake news, right? I mean, and when you continue to, put these, non-vetted stories, or you make up stories, or they're inaccurate, or whatever it may be, and you throw it out there, and you give them a direct opportunity to say, oh, fake news, can't trust them. Right, and there are people out there who will say, well, I can't trust them because they told the story about the president overfeeding fish, and so now I can only get my news from the Washington Examiner and Breitbart, right? I mean, because those are the only guys telling me the truth, right? I mean, and it's just like they shoot themselves in the foot consistently doing this, and that's where I get frustrated with the mainstream media, because it's like you don't have to do. This guy is literally punching himself in the balls day after day after day. All you have to do is talk about what he's actually doing. You don't have to make anything up. If you have a story, then do your job, vet it properly. You don't it's not about being first. They have to switch that mentality of being first no matter what, because they're screwing up their own credibility, and they are as much a part of the problem as Trump and all those supporters and the Breitbarts and everything else.
Well, one of the reasons I have no respect for Fox News is because they used to post non-stories about Obama all the time, right? It was always, I'm trying to think of a few of them. That
were Obama in the tan suit.
Okay, yeah, or not wearing the button on his lapel.
Didn't wear the lapel pin.
All that drove me nuts. Well, if other media outlets are doing the same thing to Trump and focusing on trivial, ignorant shit, then you're going to lose me too.
Yeah, and as it should be. I mean, like I think they have a responsibility, whether they like it or not, in terms of putting objective information out there, right? Like that's what you're there for. That's why that's the media should serve as the check against everything, right? Like just like listen, ideally, you go back, they go in, they look at stories, they verify, they expose bullshit, and they get it out there for the people to help us figure out what is going on with their government. When they're a part of disseminating disinformation, then they create just as much of a problem as the president who's sitting in the office, doing whatever the fuck he's doing.
Yep. All right. So, yeah. Again, maybe something comes out of this trip. As of right now,
pour another one, Jim.
I'm looking longingly.
Just pour another one.
I don't want to go through too much of this bottle tonight. I want to save it.
I fully agree. Also, and with it being as strong as it is, I definitely don't want to end up sleeping under this table.
Right, or end up with me. And thank you, Whiskey Congress.
Jimmy Stroke Face, ladies and gentlemen.
We don't want that to happen. All right. So one thing that has really set me off is the stuff that's going on in Saudi Arabia, both within their government and between them and Yemen.
Okay, so we haven't talked about that, and I know your complete and utter disdain for Saudi Arabia,
for the Saudi royal family, yes.
And so, okay, first, talk about what's going on with their. Well, hold on. Before we get to their government, let's talk about them in Yemen.
Okay, so Yemen has been essentially run by Yemen's government was essentially overthrown a couple years ago and is now being heavily backed by Iran. Iran and Saudi Arabia have had competing interests for a long time, but the idea of Iran doing anything militarily against Saudi Arabia means we jump into Saudi Arabia's defense, and suddenly we are now in a war with Iran. And Iran can talk big, but they don't want that. And frankly, we don't either, because that would not be that would be an ugly thing with lots of people dying. I've said for a long time that Iran's population is the best hope for peace in the Middle East, because Iran has a young, educated population that is held under the thumb of a repressive regime. And I could talk for hours about that, and trust me, no one wants us to. But so Iran is a dangerous player in this game. They're trying to maintain their power. They're doing it largely using, like I said, oppression of their population. Saudi Arabia
And a lot of money.
That
we gave them.
Iran and Saudi Arabia. We give money to Saudi Arabia more than we give to Iran, though.
I agree, but I mean,
true. True.
We still gave Iran a boatload of fucking money.
Iran is a country we need to play nice with. It again, I'll spare you the history. Maybe I'll do a YouTube rant about it. But fuck you. I heard your shot at me in your YouTube rant, by the way. Jim will probably talk about healthcare. I heard that shit. Don't think I don't watch this. Don't think I don't watch what you're doing.
Okay.
I took that the way NWA took No Vaseline. I was like, getting ganked by Steve on a. All right. Anyway. So anyway,
came back about as good as they did.
So Yemen's government was basically overthrown by a rebellious group or a rebel group a couple years ago. They fired a missile at the airport in Riyadh. This would be like Canada changing governments and shooting a missile at DC airport.
Yes.
The missile was apparently intercepted by a missile defense system paid for or purchased from us, and I think the whole reason this all does what it does is Saudi Arabia continues to buy billions and billions of dollars in weapon systems from us. So it's in our best interest to kind of our best financial interest, certainly not in our best humanitarian interest, to keep that machine going. But it's revolting that that's the way it works, and that's part of the reason I hate the Saudi royal family so much. That plus the fact that they use an oppressive religion-based government to hold their people down while they themselves live a lifestyle that 1980s Donald Trump would have been jealous of. I mean, the stories of what these guys do.
My God, it's unbelievable.
I think you'd probably have more fun partying with them than with Vlad.
I fully agree with you, and I would feel a lot safer partying with the royal family of the royal Saudi family than with Vlad. I feel like we would have a really good time, and then I'd wake up dead with a uranium pellet in my neck. So I fully agree with you, but
I mean, on a human level, they're disgusting.
Agreed. They use the Muslim religion and they use Islam, and it's brutal what they do, especially to the women.
Right.
And it's just it's repulsive. You're right.
They behead women for adultery, or maybe they've stopped doing that. Women just got the right to drive in Saudi Arabia. In fact, maybe that's not even official yet.
So that being said, we saw a big shift in their government.
Yes.
And I saw it and I read it and I couldn't believe
I don't trust it.
All right, first of all, let's lay out what happened.
Okay, so I don't remember. It was 11 at one point, but I don't know the exact number. Yeah. Multiple members of the royal family and other high-ranking officials were arrested in an anti-corruption, sting, whatever you want to call it.
But I mean, think about it. Just to compare it comparatively, if that happened in our government, that's like Donald Trump basically having a raid where
Al Franken, Elizabeth Warren. I mean,
right. I mean, other people in his administration. I mean, there's so many people that have been ousted and fired and everything else. But I mean, it's hard to even figure out who's still there. But like, that's like, it's essentially like General Kelly, his chief of staff, his press secretary, and some senators.
Not Sarah.
And Sarah Hooks. But like the whole, the 11 people out of the government, like high ranking officials, right? The one guy, who's the one guy who he invested in Citigroup? I'm
not going to come up with his name, but yeah, he's huge. When you talk about the amount of money and the influence that these guys control worldwide, again, it makes Donald Trump look like a guy who's asking for spare change.
It is unbelievable. But so you have 11 people in that government in high-ranking positions that were arrested and are on house arrest, and it fundamentally reshaped the way their government looks overnight.
Yes.
And now, I heard this on Breitbart of all places, but there is a thought that there is a kind of, it's hard.
A power grab? What do you?
No, not a power grab, but essentially it's a
coup d'etat.
No, it's leaders like the Saudi royal family and other leaders that use Islam, that have Islam tied into their government,
right?
Looking at the looking
you're
at the
afraid they're
religion.
going to go more fundamentalist?
No, I think that they're doing. I think
they're saying the opposite of that, right?
They're saying the opposite. Like, listen, this is coming from Stephen Bannon, that he said he's looking at this as the Saudi royal family saying, we have to change what Islam is. We have to cut our ties with people who are funding terrorism. We have to cut our ties with people that are feeding the beast that is Al Qaeda, ISIS, Boko Haram, all those terrorist groups. Even the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Muslim Brotherhood has been around for a long time. They were tied to the Nazi Party because they both had mutual hate for the Jews. So cutting ties with those groups and anyone feeding money to those groups, funneling money to those groups, allowing those groups to exist, and saying that we have to change our outlook, we have to change our religion, and we have to change the way we govern if we actually want to bring peace to this region and bring a great deal of peace in the world. And
those are the words you want to hear.
That's what you and that coming to that. I literally almost drove off the road because I was thinking the exact same thing. And it's just like, oh my God, I just agreed with Stephen. I literally almost drove off the road. I'm not joking. I was driving and he said it and I swerved, like, what the hell just happened? And I had to check myself to make sure everything was still, but I think he may be right. At the very least, on the surface level, it looks like that's what they're trying to do.
You know what?
Now, listen, we have every right and reason to question it and say maybe this is all for show. This just happened, Monday or Tuesday or whenever, or Sunday night or whenever it happened.
I think it was Sunday.
It just happened, so we have to see what actually happened. Now, listen, if they give these guys, some sort of sham trial and cut off all their heads,
which is not an impossibility.
Which is really not.
That's the difference between Saudi Arabia and the United States and the rest of the world.
Now, that's where I just might be like, guys, that's not. If you're trying to change your image, cutting heads off is not the way to go.
Some consider that to be archaic.
So that's where I'm really hesitant, because I think that might be the direction they're going, but they may just say, listen, so this is how we deal with problems. We cut off your head. And now you're no longer a problem because you don't have a head. And I think, it would be hard to say, hey, good job, guy. I mean, it's just like if you arrest them, you give them a trial, you send them to prison, but I guess if they say, listen, if you have people funding terrorism, right, and you find them guilty of it, that's treason and I guess punishable by death. I'm not big on the death penalty, but
it's so tough to.
It is because they're like, the other part of it is they do shit different.
Fair to say.
They do shit different, and different doesn't necessarily mean wrong.
In the case of cutting people's heads off, I think it does.
But we electrocute people. We kill people. We kill people with
injections. Yeah.
Right. Right. I mean,
in that regard, all right. I guess in this particular,
we have firing squads still. Utah.
Technically, it does.
Colorado still has firing squads.
I think firing squads make more sense than lethal injection or the electric chair. If you want to
know my opinion. Either way, we're still killing people.
It's a gun, not a sword. Progress.
What?
I love the fact that someone's going to hear that argument and think I'm being serious and USA. But it is a fucked up thing, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, there's so much behind the scenes stuff. There's so much
like what?
Well, is this going to be, like you said, a fair trial? Is this going to be, these people are on house arrest now? Is the prince that is possibly playing this hand now because the king is still alive and he wants to do it with the blessing of the king because the king's like 89 years old? And the fact that we're talking about kings and princes is fucking crazy, all right? It's 2017, and we have kings and princes that matter.
I disagree. I think it's actually kind of cool. I love it.
Yeah, well,
I wish there was a way I could be a prince somewhere.
I know you do.
Coming to America style.
Here's where good Steve and bad Steve collide again. It's like, this is a terrible thing. But if I could score that government contract, hook me up, baby.
Yes,
I know. All right. Anyway, it's a situation that needs to keep.
I think if I were
involved.
a prince, it would do wonders for our numbers on the show.
You would have had me executed like 10 times by now.
No, I wouldn't.
Okay, well, thank you.
I wouldn't have had you executed, tortured, maybe. For good reason. No, for my pleasure.
You drank my scotch too fast.
Well, listen. If I'm a prince, that shit don't matter. You know how much scotch I would have.
Yeah, geez.
I'd be too drunk to even
naked
care.
Women pouring scotch into your mouth through their. All right. Anyway,
drink it out of my belly button.
So anyway, this is an issue. Though. The reason I want to talk about it is it's still very unclear what's going on. It's something that the American media needs to keep an eye on because this stuff affects us and it affects the world. As messed up as the Middle East is right now.
Also, that's the other frustrating part is this story broke the same time the stupid story came out about Trump feeding the fish, right? Like this should have been plastered all over the news. Like this should have been drubbed to death. And I mean, because comparatively, if that would have happened here, I mean, that would have been... Yeah, it would still be. I mean, I'd be glad to have my guns. I'd be locking myself down and saying, I've got my gardens and my guns. I can last 3 weeks downstairs on the treadmill. Working out, getting ready for the coming incursion. But no, I mean, so it's a story that if they're not gonna follow it, then we'll follow it. And just see where it goes because I think that it could if this is what we think it could be, right? If this is the Saudi royals saying we have to change, we have to change, right? We have to change and we have to disassociate ourselves and remove people that are setting us back. Then
you ever seen Syriana?
Oh well,
character in that tried to do that and got taken out by a missile.
Well,
fired by the U.S.
But true. That would be even listen.
Right, that's what that. I mean, there's enough. Movie to real life is always a dangerous thing to take seriously. But
I mean, the conspiracy theorists out there will say that there are people with U.S. government interests who don't want to see change in the Middle East. They don't want to see peace because there's too much money being made off of the war machine that exists there. I mean, I don't
know how much Saudi Arabia has paid for U.S. weaponry, but if it's in the trillions of dollars over the years, it would not surprise me.
It has to be, right? Right. I mean, over the last 20 years alone, it's not like they get a discount. It's not like you get a missile defense system on wholesale. Right. I mean, what's the going rate for a quality missile defense system, Jim?
Right. Well, mine cost me. I got mine at a great deal.
That's the one gun you can keep.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we need to keep an eye on it. Let's hope the rest of the media does.
Let's come back domestic.
Let's talk sports.
Let's do it.
So a couple things. Josh Gordon reinstated by the Browns. You and I have talked about Josh Gordon on our old show. You've been pretty harsh. You basically said, dude, you can't smoke weed even if you think you should be allowed to, and you're not wrong. I heard a thing with Chris Carter today, though, that really kind of hit me, hit the heartstrings a bit, because Chris Carter talked about, this guy finally had to come to grips with the fact that he had an addiction issue. And that made him seem a lot more, him meaning Josh Gordon, a lot more sympathetic to me, which I don't know why that changed my mind, other than I know what Chris Carter went through. And I heard him talk about how he turned what should have been a phenomenal football career into a shit show back into a phenomenal football career. And it wasn't with just one strike.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Listen, I've dealt with addiction issues just through different lines of work, family members. We could argue that we drink too much and had issues with that.
You can't argue that we don't drink too much.
Right. So I'm very sympathetic to it. I'm very sympathetic to it's frustrating when you see a guy with that level of talent and, cliche, throw it away. And I think I am allowed to criticize him.
Sure.
In saying, don't do that. But I am also allowed, I don't take a hard line and say, you can't have a fifth chance or however many this is. And part of it, I wasn't, a lot of people really got hard on him when he was up for reinstatement last year and he checked himself into a facility because he recognized that he wasn't ready. He still had problems. That's when my whole opinion on him shifted and said, okay, now this is real, right? This isn't just, I like to smoke pot. Because I know plenty of people who like to smoke pot and, okay, he was dumb. He got busted a couple times. Because one of the times the time that really suspended, that what got him busted was he had a beer on a plane going to Vegas. That's the one that got him suspended for the year. Not last season, but the season before that, because he had already been in the system, and then the NFL rules are no drugs or alcohol, period. He had a beer on a plane, and that is what got him in trouble. So I was like, okay, I thought was kind of bullshit by the league, but I understand where they're coming from, and so I was kind of neutral on that. So then he comes back from that suspension, and then right before they're literally, Roger Goodell is going to make a decision on Josh Gordon any day, and then he himself checked himself into a 90-day facility, and then that was kind of it.
The end, yeah.
And so at that point in time, I shifted, and I realized he is dealing with a serious addiction issue, and it came out, just this week on Bleacher Report, where he said every single game that he played in from 2012 to 2014, he had some sort of, alcohol or drug in his system game time.
Yeah.
Before the
Isn't
game.
that crazy?
That I could not imagine playing a football game drunk. I couldn't, or high, or on any sort of, I could not imagine doing that. Now, I have played hungover. I have played hungover. Now I bawled my ass off because I was, and still got in trouble for it, but still, I couldn't imagine, an hour before a game having a flask and, pounding whiskey or, taking a bunch of pills or snorting or smoking or whatever.
Right.
I couldn't imagine it, which to me, again, goes to how unbelievably talented he is to be in a mind-altered state and still be able to just abuse everybody else. That's crazy how talented he is. And, I hope for his sake that he's able to come back. And listen, I'm not a Browns fan. Josh Gordon went to Baylor. I've got no ties to him whatsoever. Right? I'm a Steelers fan.
Technically, it's bad for you as a fan.
Right. I mean, because he abused the Steelers. Oh my God. I mean, the Steelers still beat him, but I mean, he racked up 200 yards receiving against the Steelers. We could do nothing with him. I mean, it looked like I was out there trying to guard him. It was ridiculous. But the reason why I hope he's able to get this shit figured out, because he could be another Chris Carter. He could be a guy that helps a lot of people if his head is on right. He could be a guy who takes other people under their wing. He could be the type of guy, he could do something so good. He could have such an amazing story that impacts maybe one person, but that's still worth it to me if he's able to do it. So I'm absolutely rooting for Josh Gordon. I do feel for him. I am definitely sympathetic to it. I still say it's, you literally had the world at your fingertips, and you did everything you could to fucking kick it away. But at the same time, fortunately, we do live in a world where you get second, third, fourth, fifth chances,
Right.
and you still have that opportunity.
Some people do.
Right? Like, I mean,
And you want to see someone who gets that chance not fuck it up.
right?
I mean,
I want to see this kid succeed because I think he can help other people.
and I do think when you come back from addiction, you're that much more credible when you talk to people about that sort of thing.
Well,
right?
yeah.
It's easy for me to say, well, I've never smoked pot in my life, but here's why you shouldn't do it. It's whatever, dude. Fine, you're boring.
Right. I mean, and I guess for him, in the people,
I've been re-examining that position in my life, by the way.
okay, we'll have to talk about that off air.
It's probably best off air.
But we,
I have not. My streak still stands. I have not broken the no pot rule yet, but I'm starting to think I'm being silly about it.
we'll talk about
All
it.
right.
So, but again, I think it's important I hope that Josh Gordon is able to turn things around. I hope that he's able to come back and be a great player, and I hope that he's able to impact people's lives. Like, I work with a program back home in Youngstown. It's called Inspiring Minds, and that program is built around, trying to keep kids off of that path.
Right.
Right. It's trying to get kids to realize their full potential, right, without having to go through, brutal situations. Now, the unfortunate part is some of these kids are, some of these kids already being alive for 10, 15 years have already experienced things that, would crush a lot of people. And so a guy like Josh Gordon could come to a place like one of our Inspiring Mind centers, and he could really have an impact because he looks like them. He does stuff that they want to do. He has a story, and if he can come back and be successful, he may be the difference between one of those kids leaving our program and staying at our program.
Right.
It's just, we thought, you and I were on the phone talking the other day, talking about Maurice Claret, same thing, right? I mean, he's a guy who went way off the path, who did have the world at his fingertips, literally punted it away, and he never got back into, he never made it in the NFL. He didn't have that huge impact, but he's turned his life around, and he's had a huge positive impact on, he's talked to Florida State, he's talked at Ohio State, he's talked at different universities, colleges, schools. He's got a program in Youngstown that he's working on developing that's very similar to Inspiring Minds, and he's having a major positive impact. And so, to your point, that a guy who's gone through something rough, who has a story to tell, is more credible than just Joe Blow off the street who is just telling you not to do it. He can say this is the cost.
And he experienced the incredible highs and the incredible lows.
Right.
I mean, from one of the most celebrated college athletes
To prison.
in recent memory,
Right.
to prison. Yeah.
He went to jail. That one hits a little close to home because, I played football with him. I know him. I mean, I just saw him, a few weeks ago, and every time I see him, there's a big hug. We embrace, and every time I see him, I think about everything that he went through, and I have mixed emotions about it because some of it pisses me off, some of it I feel really bad. Then I'm happy, But I mean, that's how I feel about Josh Gordon. I just don't have the same sort of
Personal connection, right? All right, man. We're a bit over an hour, but there's two more things I want to talk about.
Yeah.
First of all,
this one hurts.
all right.
Too.
So Roy Halliday passed away in a private airplane crash in the Gulf of Mexico. We talked about it a bit before we started talking on the air. That I saw a video of the plane doing a bunch of erratic shit, and then TMZ put this video out.
I
don't
can't
wanna see
watch it.
right?
I listen. Roy Halliday, he pitched for the Phillies and for the Blue Jays, and I'm a big baseball fan. I love it. But I'm an Indians fan. I love the Indians, and there are only a handful of guys that I watched play that didn't play for the Indians where I was rooting for them.
I remember when you got on Bryce Harper's bandwagon for a little bit because you saw him play live and you were just impressed.
that kid is a badass. But Roy Halliday, they called him Doc, Doc Halliday. I'll play off of Doc Halliday. And Roy was just that dude. He had the straight face. He showed no emotion. He very similar to Corey Kluber.
I was about to throw that out there.
Except Roy Halliday never folded. Like I can't remember a bad outing by Roy Halliday, and he decided to retire before he really had that big fall off, and so. But Roy Halliday is just one of those guys. When he pitched, you're just like, well, your team's gonna lose, right? Like, I mean, it's just like
your pitcher better hold them to 2 or less,
right?
Otherwise...
I mean, because that dude got on the mound and he threw strike after strike, and I mean, he threw curveballs that seemed like they went out of the stadium and came back, and he befuddled guys, he overpowered guys, he outsmarted guys, he was just. He never did anything wrong. Like, I mean, he barely talked, right? I mean, like, like they would interview him and he's just like, yes, I pitched a baseball game today and it was what I wanted to do. The team won. I'm glad. I'm going to go sit down and drink a very aggressive whiskey. Leave me alone, right? I mean, and you're just like, okay, and that's Doc Holliday. And by the way, they just won the World Series. I mean, he was just, he was, and I'm not a guy who like, oh, I need my athletes humble.
No, but you don't like the talkers. And that's one thing we have in common. We both prefer the get it done, let my play do the talking rather than...
the talking, it doesn't bother me, and I don't think I have a preference. Like, I mean, I have Antonio Brown from the Steelers. Like, I mean, who's hardly not a talker, but I love the guy, right? I mean, but just Roy Halliday, he was a dude who backed it up all the way through from opening day. He was the starter on opening day. He got the win, and then consistently through the season, you knew what you were going to get out of him. And then the team makes it to the World Series, and you knew that he was going to get. He'd probably have to pitch twice. He never batted an eye. It seemed like he never got tired. And I had the utmost respect for him. And when that came across, when I saw that on Twitter, I multiple times almost drove off the road over the last week.
Yeah, really.
It's dangerous for everybody in Maryland. But that one hit me hard, just because he was just. I guess he's one of those guys where. When he went into the Hall of Fame, that probably is one I might have tried to make it to Cooperstown for.
He's not there yet, right? He's not been retired.
He hasn't been. Yeah,
well, he'll get in there on a first ballot for sure, but obviously it'll be different now.
Yeah, I mean, just it's a devastating loss for baseball. Although he's not one of those guys who would have been, he's not one of those guys who would have been out there championing for baseball. He never would have been the commissioner. He never would have coached. You know what I mean? Like he was flying a plane by himself. Right. You know what I mean? Like he's a loner.
I mean, I know a few people who do that as a hobby, and they're very passionate about it. And just a dangerous hobby. For me, my Twitter thing Twitter notification popped up, and it said former Major League pitcher Roy Halliday, and I went, oh shit. It's not going to be just won the lottery.
Right.
It was
Had a new baby.
Yeah, right.
No.
It was like, oh, this is bad news. All right, man. I want to talk to you about boxing a little bit, though.
I want to talk to you about it, too.
You and I are boxing fans.
Yep.
Passionate boxing fans.
Love it.
There were heavyweight championship fights in back-to-back weeks. I only knew about them because I randomly scrolled through and saw on Showtime Championship Boxing, and I told you about it.
Yeah, both of them. And the
Anthony Joshua won a fight in Great Britain. He's a champion. And Deontay Wilder beat Brahmin Stavern in a rematch fight. He knocked him out in the first round with just... Stavern is a tough guy. He did not appear to be in great shape for this fight. He got lit up with a straight right hand.
Dude, get knocked out in the first round.
Got drilled with a straight right hand, split his gloves, and he just didn't get right again. But the fact that heavyweight champion of the world used to be the biggest sporting event in the world.
Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, George Foreman,
Frazier. Joe Lewis, going back to Joe Lewis and way before that, all the way up through Tyson, Evander Holyfield. I mean,
think about American Gangster, right?
Right.
Like going back to that movie is one of my favorite movies of all time. And
you and I are the only people I know who love that movie. I love that movie.
If
People
you
are
don't like
that movie
it-
was slow. It was a fucking brilliant movie.
Okay, yeah. Besides that, but I mean, in that fight, right? It's a Joe Louis fight.
No, Joe Frazier and
Or Joe
Muhammad
Frazier.
Ali.
I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's a huge fight, right? A heavyweight fight in every starlet. Everybody is there, right? And that's one of the things that actually,
Unravels Frank Lewis's empire.
Because they're trying to figure out, well, why the hell is who? Like we know this guy, we know this guy, we know this guy. Who is this guy?
Wearing the $60,000 chinchilla coat,
Right.
too deep in the movie.
But still, I mean, but that's how big boxing was, right?
Right.
I mean, it like UFC now.
That was an event among events, though. That was Ali Frazier the first time they
Yes.
fight. Ali coming back from being banned from the sport for not entering the draft. Two undefeated guys won a champ. I mean, that was the event
true.
of
I mean,
events.
that's Pacquiao Mayweather. That's
That's
Mayweather, McGregor, all that other stuff. I mean,
Only if Mayweather and McGregor was actually a legitimate fight between two great fighters, that would have been what it was.
well, I mean, and just in scale,
Yeah.
But that's how big boxing was. Now, I mean, but boxing also used to be where every year, at least twice a year, you had two massive fights that were massively promoted, and you knew about them. And
the heavyweight division was where it was.
Where it was, right? I mean, and now, nothing. I mean, you had two
McGregor Mayweather.
Well, the fact that you had two heavyweight world championship fights, right, back to back. It's just like, okay, wait, hold on, right? Like, I mean, so now we have two heavyweight champions of the world.
I think we actually have three, but
Right. I mean, and that's another
part of the
issue
problem. But
with boxing, and we should probably save that and just do a boxing specific show.
Let's do that.
That people, that they can tune into if they like boxing or want to talk more about it or hear us talk more about it. But it's bad job from the boxing community, and
it was if you had Showtime, you had the ability to watch it without paying extra money. This was not a pay-per-view thing, and they didn't. Neither of us had it on our calendars, and you didn't even know it happened until I told you.
I had no idea it happened.
And
although
I found it randomly because I was
I don't know if I actually have Showtime or not.
maybe part of the problem, but I do, and like literally, I was scrolling through stuff. I'm like, holy shit, there's a fight, and then they talked about the next fight, and I had to be reminded by it when I scrolled by it later again. So,
one thing about Showtime though, they have great soft porn.
They do have that, and they had the show Californication, which was one of my favorites until the last season, which sucked.
Yeah, Showtime soft porn is pretty good.
Okay,
I think it's better than Cinemax.
This is going to devolve if we keep going down this road. You ready to?
Let's not go down.
Let's not go down this road. We should do a boxing show sometime, but we should just say thank you very much for listening. This has been Whiskey Congress. We are at Whiskey Congress on social media, whiskeycongress.com, podcast. Our podcast is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and all other major things. But if you're listening to this, you probably know that already. Podbean is our host, and
we got we put out some stuff on YouTube. We're gonna do a quick little video here. Throw that up there as well.
Okay.
So yeah, just sprung that on you.
Yeah, I must have missed a meeting. All right, man. Good talking to you. Really enjoyed it.
Yep.
Later.